Do you feel like that there's less excitement about the creator economy these days? And yes, it's easy to go and blame hype around AI for it, but I think it's a little bit deeper than that. And the way I refer to this change is we kind of like moved out of this like hip gold rush. I'm, on the prairies of California, one of the first people to go there with my pickaxe, and I'm trying to look for the nuggets. We moved from that environment where it was very ad hoc, very hippie like, to the place where it's very industrialized now. It's like an industrial mining complex that we built in place of what used to be just a spot where a bunch of us hang out with our pickaxes and slowly kind of like, search for gold. I hope this metaphor tracks, but I do believe that there's not that there's less excitement right now in the creator economy. I've been pondering this question for a little bit, and I talk about business of being a creator, right? So obviously I think about this topic all the time. What I really came to realize is that we just got to the point right now where we're very good at it, right? So I'll kind of like break it down into three areas that I think are really impacting this kind of like level of hype and the kind of tone in which we currently talk about the creator economy. So one being, we moved away from those days where, like, someone like Casey Neistat would be running around with a camera and it will be a novelty. Now, everyone with their cell phone is a creator, like, truly, right? The amount of people who popped in certain niches and areas, just insurmountably, insurmountably, immeasurably, kind of like entered all sorts of our life, right? From picking the books about ADHD to picking the toilets to finding an apartment in a certain city to like cooking and making certain types of dishes, or even subcultures of certain dishes, like, I don't know, like gluten-free versions of Italian food, right? There is a creator out there who is really good at it, who is really good at communicating those values, who's really doing their research, and they really kind of like created the environment where it just became a lot more fragmented, right? Because of the fact that we grew and we matured as an industry, you start seeing those like pockets of creators popping in and really taking over those niches. Started from the fact that we needed to differentiate it from each other, but ended up with the fact that people have certain needs. I talk about in my prior videos, right, about the whole idea about generating the value for your viewer, right, and what did the viewer hire you to do. It evolved from the perspective of the value they seek as a viewer, we seek as a creator to deliver to them, to make sure we have that, like, slice of our life within the creator economy. It also, I think, besides the fragmentation, what it ended up being, the algorithms just matured, right? From the perspective of the platforms. You see it in the whole conversation about like retiring the hashtags. They used to be the hashtags, there used to be certain keywords, right? People try to like game the system by referral links. There's like a lot of different ways by which people try to indicate to the algorithm like, hey, you should recommend to the viewers my content. At this point in time, algorithms got so good that they will figure out, there's so much data right now on all the viewers, right? So they can very quickly tell whether certain types of video will track with certain audiences, right? And they have the system around it, and there's no hacks now in that system, right? I roll my eyes, to be honest, kind of like looking at some of them creators who kind of like talk about like the growth hacks, right, in the creator economy these days, because there isn't really much. It all comes down to understand the kind of value you provide, right, to your audience, understand why they would go and click on your video if they're seeking for that kind of value, and just make a good video, right? And the definition of the good is a lot different now because people leaned into certain areas, right? Like, hey, you need to be really hyped in the first 6 seconds of the video, you need to do this, you need to do that. As people start adopting those methodologies kind of like hit the bell curve, so to speak, and start sliding down in their effectiveness, in the sense that at the very beginning, when you develop some of those hacks, they become very efficient because no one really doing them. You're one of the first ones. It's a novelty. Viewers not yet used to it, so you kind of like hit that, upper trajectory, and you take advantage of it. But then you hit the peak of it, right, at the bell curve, because so many other creators now adopting it, and the viewers start seeing it more and more and more. All of a sudden, everyone has in their first 10 seconds someone yelling at them with a bunch of colors, and things are switching, and the text keep popping into certain types of fonts, right? That becomes so old that viewers stop interacting with it. It stop having the same kind of like engagement effect. And so all of a sudden, that mythology drops off and it kind of like goes through its own cycle. I think we just went through so many cycles now that certain viewers develop certain attitudes and certain, tastes when it comes to the type of content that they seek. And this is where that fragmentation kind of like came in as well, because within the selection, you used to have maybe like, I don't know, 20, 30 really big creators who are really good at their job providing interesting content. to now having like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, amazing creators out there who are doing a great job with producing the content. So you as a viewer, you can potentially find someone who is covering the topic that you like. And again, gluten-free Italian food. And there's going to be probably like 5, 6 different flavors of the creator who covers that topic, depending on how much they're yelling at you at the beginning of the video, depending on the setting, depending how long or how short it is. It's the short form vertical tab content, is a long form, and there's like, a 1 hour lecture on efficiency of certain types of flour in a certain types of pasta, right? Like, I don't know, making stuff up on the spot, but the idea is that because of the fact that you have fragmentation, because of the fact that people develop certain tastes and attitudes, and they now learn how to catch those, like, retention hacks, those no longer work. And it really comes back to, your intrinsic value that you provide to your viewer, and essentially the quality of content that you deliver. And this is a boring answer to give to people, right? Folks who used to like make content about growth hacks on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, now probably making content about growth hacks on AI or something like this, right? Like create the business in 10 minutes using AI. I bet you there's like 50 videos like that that can just pop up and immediately. The idea is now that because it's not as exciting, right, it doesn't necessarily drive the same kind of like volume of traffic to that type of content. That's why you see less of it, right? I see a lot of my favorite creators who cover those kind of like hacks, right, or cover different methodologies and strategies on how you should evolve as a creator. Like their content I see is not making the same numbers as it used to, right? I see in the levels of engagement on those videos, right, is not the same as it used to, because again, we just grinded it all out, right? It used to be a novelty when we were with our pickaxes in the gold rush, and now we industrialize it to the point where we learn how to extract every single extra gram out of that entire operation, right? So that made it a lot less exciting and a lot more programmatic and, kind of like run-of-the-mill standard process that you can all go through. And it also kind of like reflects, I think, on the brand side of things, which is exciting. Again, I still think adoption can do a lot more, right? I still see way too many brands not leveraging the creators. I think that really more of reflective of the skills and understanding of the market on the part of those teams who are running the marketing programs within those organizations. It's less on the maturity of the creator economy. I think once as a brand you realize that you need to work with a creator, you can just quickly plug in and you can find the right people. So from that perspective, I feel like you're also seeing a little bit more of the industrialization, right? Like the agencies now know how to work with the creators know how to work with the brands that realize that they need to work with the creators. It's a lot less of a, this venture into the uncharted territories kind of experiment. And it's more about like, hey, we know, we've seen it works, we've seen how others have done it. There's now years worth of different examples over the past like 2-3 years. So we can go and actually not only experiment, we can experiment with a high level of confidence that certain things will work better than the others based on those past experiences from other companies, right? We can learn from their lesson. And that again removes certain aspect of this mystery, right? of any process, because that's what it all hinges on, right? As a creator, when we tell stories about certain areas, and here specifically I'm talking about the creator economy, you need that mystery, you need that veil, that fog of war. Something is uncertain out there, and I'm going to go and discover it, and we're going to, together with my viewer, understand if there's something out there that is worth exploring, right? Now it becomes kind of like, this is one of like 100 other videos on this specific topic that people already tried and did it. And again, industrialized the heck out of it, right? And made it very nice and well functioning part of the business. So not to say there's still uncharted territories, not to say that there are no uncharted territories here still, right? There's still some industries, there's still certain areas, certain geographies that are still kind of like coming online, so to speak, and learning how to leverage the creator economy. So I feel like we're going to get there in those regions, right? But again, it comes back to that defragmentation, kind of like understanding, I guess, fragmentation of like the entire industry, and understanding that there's so many now unique pockets all over the world, and some of them, yes, are still catching up to the place where maybe some countries and some niches in the United States are, but they will catch up there much faster because again, they have this history that they can just speed run through, because they don't have to repeat the same mistakes as, say, we did 9-10 years ago when I started making content. They can just look at what works right now, look at some of those lessons that we have, and there's going to be, again, so much information, institutional knowledge within the economy that they can quickly catch up and figure out what will actually work. And they're very smart and industrialized individuals because they grew up with this, right? And so they can take it to kind of like the next level. And yes, and finally, it also is about AI, right? So we talk about fragmentation, we talk about deeper niches, we've spoken about kind of like just how much more industrialized it is without any hacks, and with brands and creators understanding how it works and the viewers understanding how it works. So when you're in that environment, it's all good. It's actually growing. We're still making more money. There's still a lot of interesting opportunities and businesses that are going to come out of it. But also because of the fact that it's so industrialized right now and it's not as like sexy to write about and talk about, a lot of that shift start happening towards AI, because AI is now this like, ooh, there's some mystery behind it. Ooh, we don't know how it works. Oh, but look at all these companies and look at all these like billions of dollars in numbers that are being thrown around. What is happening there? It's exciting. Let's go tap into it. That is now taking a lot of attention away from something that is a lot more established, like the creator economy. If you've watched my videos before, you know my opinion on the current state of the AI, right? The gist of it, it's a huge freaking bubble, and you can go check out my video where I talk specifically about OpenAI and where kind of like it's gonna, I think, lead. And unfortunately, not too many positives that I extracted, at least on the economy side. I think technology side, it's awesome. We're learning, we're getting a lot of interesting tools. I use it in a day-to-day, especially some research parts or like cleaning certain things up when I work on a more technical side where like I don't know how to code, and that's what it helps me. But from the perspective of like as an industry, it's now the focal point, right? All the VC money is going there, a lot of investment money are going there. It just, I do see a point in time for that specific industry, and it's something even the creator economy went through, where you're going to see the dip in excitement, and primarily it's going to be around one or two of those major companies starting to crumble, right? And in, again, spoiler alert to my other video, I do think OpenAI is like a prime suspect for this, and first half of 2026 will be very interesting thanks to them. But in the creator economy, we had that moment where all of a sudden a bunch of these, like, there was both esports to some extent, right? Another topic that I discussed recently. There was this implosion in the esports, and there was an implosion in the number of businesses that just like opened up, and the amount of money VCs thrown at some of the companies to target the creator economy. But they were a little bit ahead of the curve when it comes to the maturation of the business, and a lot of those businesses failed because they failed to monetize, right? And that kind of like created this like reset, and people said, wait a second, are we like overhyped about this whole creator economy thing? Maybe we should take a little bit of a precaution and take a more cautious approach. And you saw this kind of like grow into those and hype, dip, and now it's slowly growing at an industrialized level. That's exactly what I think what's going to happen with AI, and it's going to go through its own hype, where right now we're kind of like at the peak. I think we're at the zenith of that entire hype, and the cliff is coming. I think the cliff is coming. One of those companies fails, people reset, the market resets, there's a bunch of businesses close off, there's a sell-off, and then we're going to slowly industrialize. And I have this whole perspective on the agentic AI that's going to continue to grow, and I think that's what's going to become industrialized, and we're going to see so many unique individual kind of like bits and pieces of different production, the workflows across different kind of companies just being fully taken over by agentic AIs. But again, smaller use cases, and not that pursuit for big AGI kind of like a use case, right? So I do not expect that dip necessarily to cause a lot of people coming back and all of a sudden getting overhyped about the creator economy. I can see, because of how heavily reliant the creator economy is on the technology, and we take advantage of the technology and we use it in ways to kind of like help our brands grow. So I do see the convergence point where we're going to see those kind of like paths merging to some extent, and AI being more and more introduced and becoming more standard part of our day-to-day, creators opening their agentic AI companies, some interesting tools and products being created and created with the help of AI, but promoted with the help of the creators. It all becomes this more kind of like maturation stage now, right? We're getting more serious, we're getting more industrialized about it. It's a lot less about, as I said, that gold rush with the pickaxe on the frontiers being one of the first few. We're now in that stage where things get a little bit boring, because they're all about eking out this single percentages, fraction of the percent of efficiency out of the system, versus discovering major hacks and like creating 20% efficiency immediately on the spot. So that's it, kind of like my mini rant about where we are, I think, in the creator economy, and just something I'm contemplating a lot on, right? I make the content about it, and there's so many still interesting stories to tell. There's so many interesting things to discuss and explore. But I also noticed that a lot of those topics now more and more actually converge with a lot of technology topics, which absolutely fine, and it's a normal thing. And if you look at the history of my channel over the past like whatever, close to 9 years now, I covered tech a lot in the past, right? I had my evolution, my stages, and I explored. And so I do believe that that might mean that, hey, there might be other interesting topics that I'll find to explore. And just in general, my general policy on my channel, the way I lasted uploading a video every week for the past almost 9 years is the fact that I let myself pick a topic, right? And I don't shy away from sometimes tracking down the new path just because it keeps me engaged as well and keeps me entertained and talk about the industry. And as I said, creator economy has plenty of those stories, so no shortage of ideas. But also from the perspective, I think the convergence with the technology and some of the stories that's going to come out around the economy, right, and the AI's effect and reset and that hype cycle will have a lot to do with what we're going to have to tackle, I think, over the especially the next year. So as a creator, just stay on the lookout. I made a couple of videos about things you should consider, especially in a tougher economic environment. And I don't think like any economy is shielded. Again, one of my prior videos, specific actually about the hype cycle of AI, talks about how we're so intertwined right now with all the economies that something happening here in the United States with a company like OpenAI or Nvidia, it will be like a butterfly effect. It's going to be like a tornado on the other side of the world. So you're gonna have to be considerate. You are not fully isolated as a creator, so you have to be cautious and thoughtful about what you do, especially going into 2026. So we're going to talk a lot more about that. And yeah, from the perspective of just current state of things, I'm actually curious to hear what you think. Like, do you feel like we entered that industrialized stage and that's why things are maybe not as like sexy right now to talk about, and people just like try to find other topics that are a little bit more exciting for their audience? Or do you think that they're just like, again, maybe I'm isolated in my own niche and I see only certain things, and you're in the other niche that things are still very much exciting, bubbly, and there's a lot of things going on? Let us know. I would love to check that niche out. Otherwise, I'll see you next Saturday. Peace.